It's a topic that's been beaten beyond recognition at this point, but Sonic 06 was an unmitigated disaster for Sonic's reputation. While seeming like an overdramatic statement now, there was real talk at the time if Sonic as a series would even be able to survive after that game. That's how negatively the reputation of the franchise was at that point in time. But Sonic Team knew that something had to change. Their 3D formula at that point just wasn't working out for them, and we'd see just how drastically things would be shaken up compared to the previous 3D outings with 2008's Sonic Unleashed. Now, I've got to state the obvious here, but the CGI animation shown here is absolutely jaw-dropping. The CGI cutscenes have always looked pretty good in earlier titles, but over 10 years later, I reckon this still looks pretty great. Sonic's trashing Eggman ships from the word go until he's tricked and has Super Sonic and the Chaos Emeralds by extension ripped away from him, being used so Eggman could split the Earth apart and awake an ancient entity named Dark Gaia, turning Sonic into a monster that we'd come to name the Werehog and throwing him out into space along with said emeralds. Quite the action-packed intro to say the least. I really like how the story just starts off straight away, no nonsense, with Sonic getting at Eggman and Eggman getting the upper hand from the word go and his plans going according to plan. Sonic does manage to land back on Earth without dying somehow, but the force of his fat dumpy knocks all of the brain cells out of this little creature who can't remember anything about himself. So, feeling bad that he accidentally gave it a lobotomy, Sonic says he'll help him recover his memories, starting this world adventure off proper. With that hell of a setup, we have our goals for the rest of the game. Get the Chaos Emeralds back to normal, stop Dark Gaia, and help the little goblin we found get his memory back. Getting straight into a quick tutorial level which does a good job establishing the new gameplay style that will come to be known as the boost formula. By collecting rings and killing enemies, the gauge at the bottom left corner of the screen will fill up, showing how much boost energy that you have. While holding the boost button, Sonic will shoot off in any direction he's facing, destroying enemies just by touching them and automatically collecting any nearby rings. The gameplay loop being that the better you know the level, you can avoid obstacles and get rings quicker, keeping up your boost, and being a great way of recapturing the replayability of older titles of always trying to get a better time. The little critter seems to love sweets though, so Sonic calls him Chip based on that. They look around to see if anyone in town knows who he is, which introduces how hub worlds work in this game. As Eggman broke the world apart, Sonic needs to travel all over to restore it, starting us off in... Now come to think of it, I never heard most of these places said out loud. Apotos, which is inspired by Greece. All the areas in the game are based on countries in the real world, and the music and visuals will all reflect this. They also serve as kind of a reintroduction to humans in Sonic games, this time looking heavily inspired by Pixar films, and honestly, this is the look they should go for if they ever have human characters in Sonic games. It fits perfectly in my opinion, and they haven't been integrated better into Sonic's world before or since. The hub bits also don't overstay their welcome, I think, which you generally only have to talk to a couple of NPCs to unlock the next levels, but they're more if you want to speak to them. Control-wise, I think they work well. Sonic feels very snappy and responsive for being so fast. It's very rare that anything comes up that feels impossible to react to with just how quick you can tear through levels this time around, which I think does deserve major props, but I hate that the homing attack is on the same button as the boost. It's always been tap, jump twice to homing attack. They've never gone back to this method, and that's for good reason. It's cursed, it messes with my muscle memory, and I hate it. It irks me. But that's how Sonic works during the day, however. At night, things are far more different. The Werehog isn't just for show or for the story, he has his own levels, and the levels focus much more around actual exploration and beat 'em up style combat. It's a pretty controversial gimmick, especially at the time, but I personally don't mind the Werehog that much. Sonic Team were clearly inspired by action titles popular at the time, like the PS2 God of War games and Devil May Cry. They even have him have a Devil Trigger style Unleashed mode, speeding him up and increasing his damage. This idea, I think, was solid to be honest, but the execution left quite a lot to be desired, mainly with how stop and go the combat feels, but it isn't terrible. My main complaint actually is the performance, probably. I'm playing this on original hardware, on Xbox 360 specifically, and this game cannot hold a stable frame rate to save its life, but I'll get more into this gripe later on in the video. Oh, and the nighttime tracks? Amazing bits of music that you'll only get to hear for about 30 seconds, as anytime you come into 10 square foot of an enemy, I hope you'd like to hear the specific notes of da 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 da. At the end of the first Werehog level, you save Tails, and he's how you travel across the world via the tornado, even having a shooting minigame like in Sonic Adventure 1. This time around, it's completely on rails and is just purely a quick time event though. It's not awful, don't get me wrong, it's a fine enough little break from regular gameplay, but I vastly prefer how SA1 handles it. The next area visited is Spagonia, which is based on Italy. Sonic doesn't stay here for long though, as the person they're looking for, Professor Pickle, has been kidnapped by Eggman, who's keeping him in Missouri, which is inspired by Africa. Or is it Mazuri? Is it just pronounced the same as the place in America, like Missouri? I'm gonna keep calling it Missouri because that's funnier to me. This might be jumping the gun a little bit, but the early Werehog levels are by far the best in the game for the character. There's lots of well-designed branching paths for extra collectibles, including Sun and Moon medals, important items that I'll talk about later, and best of all, the levels don't overstay their welcome, which becomes a very big problem the deeper you get into this game. Although I don't mind the Werehog, like I said before, it still has always stuck out as a weird addition to me. I mean, you've made a character that's gameplay revolves around combat, collecting treasures. There's someone who would fit perfectly in this role, right? A character that has been existing in this series since the 90s, who has been in previous games that also revolve around combat and collecting items. I wonder who that could be.
Knock knock, it's Knuckles.
Apparently a couple more characters were meant to appear in the game, namely Shadow and Knuckles, but they were cut for unknown reasons. I guess this has to do with the title of the game as well in Japan. In Japan this is called Sonic World Adventure, and I can't corroborate if this is true, but apparently this was originally meant to be a full-on Sonic Adventure 3, but they changed it due to the reception of Sonic 06's different characters and gameplay styles. So yeah, I found that little tidbit of information while I was doing research for this video, but I haven't been able to find any sort of interviews, whether that's a video or like interview transcripts, where they say Sonic Adventure 3 was the plan before they changed their minds and went Unleashed, but like I say, I'm just putting it out there, I don't know if it's true. Another side note, apparently their absence is explained in the comics. Knuckles is just on Angel Island making sure that it's safe after the world shattered, which is fair, it's very on brand for him. And apparently Shadow's just going around helping people affected by the world splitting. I don't keep up with the comics at all, but that's nice. Oh, and this game's also the debut of Orbot, the little robot character that pretty much solely exists to be passive-aggressive towards Eggman. He's alright. Missouri's daytime level, Savannah Citadel, introduces the drift mechanic, letting you skim tight corners whilst keeping your speed up, but I'm terrible at using this. It always feels too loose to work properly for me, and I end up just careening into the side of a wall. We also have our first boss fight of the game here, the Egg Beetle. It's a fun enough little fight with lots of chances to get good bits of damage in. I ended up quite enjoying it. When going back to Spagonia, Sonic runs into Amy, who initially makes the right call in it being Sonic for once, but then mistakes him for someone else since he's in his Werehog form. It elicits an interesting response from him though. He seems genuinely upset that she doesn't seem to recognize him, which I found to be quite interesting because he's always like, go away, Amy, don't hug me, don't touch me. But when she does, and then she's like, oh, you're not Sonic, and then, like, goes to get away from him, that kind of upsets him. It's got a little bit of a hint of a relationship growing between them, I don't know. It's now here that the game starts to become more open, with two different Gaia temples being accessible at one time. I'll go ahead and start with Spagonia in the night time. The set piece of dropping the massive barrel down to open up more of the level is a lot of fun, and the ending section where you scale the inside of the clock tower and then later shimmy along the hands of it is a really fun and inventive platforming challenge too. Oh, and after the level, some guy here calls Amy Babe when we know she's more of a cutie than a hottie. Guptil did not create that masterpiece of a video for nothing, you absolute heathen.
Why, it's Amy Rose, of course! Though more of a cutie than a hottie.
Nah, I'm just kidding. The dude's possessed, and he's not the only one. When you come across someone acting weird and having a purple glow around them when talking, Chip needs to take a photo of them, essentially exercising them of Dark Gaia creatures so Sonic could beat them to death. After saving the townspeople, Amy uses her 200 IQ to work out that it really is Sonic. Unleashed also has a bit of a Metroidvania aspect to its design that I forgot about, with the small entrance areas opening up the more you get through the game to play more levels, along with the exorcism bits all over the world. On that, it's really annoying that you only have 2 shots before having to go back to the professor. Just make the camera unlimited, man, it's fine. Also, the Sun and Moon medals. You remember them, yeah? They're needed to access said levels. Early on though, as long as you're reasonably looking for them, you should be fine, but a heads up, this is going to be an issue late game. Alaska's the next stop, which is based on Alaska. It introduces 2 new gameplay elements, the first being that Sonic can run along water with no problem by boosting. Having him be so fast that he just runs along the water is actually a pretty inventive way of keeping water sections fun and fast paced, which previous games have infamously struggled with. And the second being upgrades, which I also completely forgot this game had, to be honest. I hadn't mentioned it up until now, but I haven't played this game in many, many years, and it felt really weird that Sonic didn't have certain moves that I could swear he did and kinda took for granted. The first upgrade in the game are the spiky shoes, which let you perform the stomp. The bobsled is a cute little gimmick in the level Cool Edge as well, and it's nice to see a whale actually help Sonic out for once. The one that tried to eat him at the end, that's just a fluke. He does not represent the feelings of the whale community, I swear. After doing Cool Edge's daytime stage, a new destination is shown, but I chose to go back to Spagonia for another upgrade, the wall jump shoes, which do exactly what they say on the tin. The shoebox? I don't know, you jump on walls. Cool. I decided to complete some extra levels in Missouri since I got this, and oh my lord, Act 2 is one of the hardest levels in the game, and I don't know why, because it's so early. Anyways, since I did a couple of extra levels, I want to focus on the new area now. This is Chunnan, which is based on China. Their village elder has gone missing, so Sonic, being the cool dude he is, agrees to look for him. It's also here we get the air shoes, letting us perform the air boost. You have to wall jump in order to get this upgrade in the first place, which is a clever little way of making sure that the player is actually exploring the entrance areas as well as the levels themselves. Chunnan is home to the first Werehog boss, the Dark Gaia Phoenix. You need to throw buckets of water at him to put out his flames before beating him up in regular gameplay and quick time events, which I suck at. But I managed to beat it and restore this Chaos Emerald. Dragon Road, the daytime stage, is dope though. It's one of my favourite levels in the game. It is a bit tricky, and I'm not a big fan that it feels like it's quite arbitrary what does or doesn't stop you dead in your tracks when running on the water, but that is a nitpick if anything. After that, it's time for the next boss at Spagonia's temple, which is a big fish piloted by some absolutely adorable little robot fellas, I have to say. It sucks that they're only in this game. I want to bring back the little robot guys. They're really cute. It's pretty similar to the earlier Eggman boss, with the addition of having a few projectiles and lasers that you need to dodge. With that taken care of, we need to go back to Holoska to get the key, and I feel super mixed about the Werehog's level here. There are bits that I adore, and bits that I despise. I love when you're in the tunnels or on slides where you get propelled super fast and super far, but the slippery movement and the platforms that break under your weight after stepping on them for a second are really frustrating. Like, look at Werehog's shoes, they've got spikes in them, he shouldn't be really affected by slippery ice, he can just put in a bit of weight on his legs and be stuck into the ground, surely. It's also at this point where the combat is really starting to show its faults, mainly with how many enemies you have to fight. One thing I don't get are the optional QTEs. They're only really useful for large enemies and mini-bosses with fat health bars. Anything else, they'll die in one heavy combo anyway, so there's no point in potentially messing it up and having to beat them up all over again. The Dark Moray boss I really like though, having to use canisters scattered throughout the level to freeze the dragons before climbing up and taking out the big one up top. The motion blur at the end of the fight is a bit fucking obnoxious though, I can't lie. Beating this boss gives access to both Shamar and Empire City, inspired by Jordan and New York respectively. Shamar is where we finally get access to the Lightspeed dash, and it's so odd to me that it's given this late into the game. Its daytime level, Arid Sands, is alright. I don't hate it, but it's just kind of there for me. But I do really like seeing the townspeople outside of the hub area and in the actual level. It gives the stage a lot more life, and I wish that more stages did this, to be honest. Skyscraper Scamper has a really sweet concept of running along rooftops in the dead of night, but I am deathly afraid of heights, and some of the camera angles and the do-or-die platforming bits make my stomach hurt. Empire City's daytime stage, on the other hand, is far more my vibe. The sheer amount of branching paths that organically tie together is super impressive. It's probably the best designed level in the game and one of my personal favourites. I really enjoyed Shamar's night stage too. It focuses more on the combat with a reasonable amount of enemies. The puzzles were pretty basic admittedly, but hey, I had fun with it. With that level done, we've got to fight against the Dark Guardian, a much more puzzle-focused boss compared to the rest. You need to push blocks into the blue sections to damage it, and it's probably my favourite nighttime boss so far, having a good balance on combat, like when fighting the boss and driving away smaller enemies from pushing the blocks back, and when to focus on the puzzle aspect of moving them around. With that done, it's time to move on to Adabat, which from what I've researched is based on Southeast Asia, but I always got a Dubai vibe from it, even though that's in Southwest Asia, so I'm not sure why. We've got another great Werehog level in Jungle Joyride, having a great mix of combat and fun platforming sections. The main gimmick here being that you need to use temporary platforms to unlock the main path forward. It works really well. Oh, and you know how I mentioned earlier that medal collecting isn't really an issue and it only becomes one in the late game? Yeah, it's an issue here. I'm missing a whopping 15 Sun medals. In the game's defense, this is the first time I've had this issue, so in my experience, medal collecting hasn't been nearly as bad as some people online have made it out to be, but it is still a bit of a pain. After taking some time to collect the medals I needed, I'm finally onto Adabat's day stage to get the Gaia key, and this is where the game's performance really suffers in the daytime stages. Don't get me wrong, there had been some frame drops in the daytime stages, but they'd been pretty negligible so far, with the main performance issues being in the nighttime levels. Here though, nah, it can't keep a stable frame rate to save its life. Which is such a shame because the level design itself is fantastic, with genuinely challenging yet satisfying platforming. Not to mention that the scenery is absolutely gorgeous, but it's kinda hard to focus on that when the frame rate is hitting single digits, and like, I'm really not a frame rate snob, I'm really not one of those types of people, but if even I'm struggling to play a game because of it, then yeah, something's wrong. The boss here is the Egglancer, and it's a boss I think is decent. It is a good extension on the earlier Egg Beetle fight, and just like that one, it rewards playing it well with extra hits, but it doesn't really do a lot different for me to say that it's a lot better. It is just kind of there. Once it's defeated though, it's revealed that Chip is actually Light Gaia, being Dark Gaia's counterpart. He woke up about the same time as him, but lost his memory from Sonic falling on him. I know I haven't spoken about him much at all, and that's mainly because I don't have a ton to say about him. I don't really like him. I know he's not a popular character, and yeah, he is just kind of either there or a bit annoying. But I have to admit, the cutscene of him with Sonic after the last temple is very sweet. After a tough aerial sequence on the tornado, we get to the final area in the game, Eggmanland. This has been Eggman's goal since Sonic 1, but from what I can remember, this is the first time we actually get to see it completed. This massive industrial factory theme park country thing is 100% on brand for him. However, I need to stress how much I fucking hate Eggmanland. It is a giant fuck off gauntlet with the worst aspects of the game packed into a level that can take upward of an hour to beat. You've got the Werehog's stinky balancing gimmick with nothing to grab onto if you move even slightly off kilter, super precise platforming on awkward, easy to fall off surfaces as normal Sonic, and I was playing this level at like 1 in the morning for the first time, and I was adamant on finishing this level. And looking back on my notes, it's just like a rant that's like 2 minutes worth of me just being pissed off. And looking back on it, it is kind of funny, but this level is absolutely fucking atrocious. I hate every single second of this fucking place. So yeah, continuing this little Eggmanland saga. So yeah, I beat it. Took me an hour, but I was adamant on beating it, and I went straight to bed. Then I thought the next day I got up, I was happy, I was eager, I was ready to take on the day, and I thought, you know what? I didn't give Eggmanland a fair shake. I was tired, I was grumpy, I was looking to hate it. Yes, it does take a long time. Was that just a me issue? I'm gonna play it again just to make sure that it wasn't me and I was looking at the level fairly. It took me 45 minutes, and it was not just me being tired and grumpy. The level is just actual torture. Like, I get that you want the final level to be a challenge, and I do think it's a good idea of having a level of Daytime Sonic and Werehog Sonic in one bit. It means that you get to test the player against everything they've learned on the fly with both styles of gameplay. I think that in itself is a really good idea. I do not think that it should take 45 minutes. I don't think any Sonic level should reasonably take 45 minutes to complete. That is just ridiculous. I'm going to move along from this, otherwise I'm going to be stuck in Eggmanland forever. It is bad. I hate it. It is the worst level in the game by far. One of the worst Sonic levels in any Sonic game. One of the worst levels in any Sonic game. So I'm going to move on. As Sonic is putting the final emerald in the altar, Eggman shows up. He's not going to let him win so easily, so now we've got to fight him in the crumbling Eggmanland, hurtling towards the center of the earth while he's in his Egg Dragoon. Oh, and this is a bit unrelated, but with the final altar being located here, it did kind of make me think just how underused Empire City is. It's the only area without any Gaia Temple or much of any story significance, really. The only time it's ever brought up in the story is Professor Pickle saying, hey, you can go here. But yeah, nothing in the story has anything to do with Empire City. So it just sticks out to me as kind of weird. I looked to see if there was any sort of cut content relating to it, but I couldn't seem to find anything reported about Sonic Team wanting to do more with Empire City. Anyway, this is easily the best Werehog boss in the game. The only thing I didn't really like was the ramping up of the QTEs, and by that I mean the amount that it asks you to do. I mean, come on, 16 button presses is a little bit excessive. After another ace CG cutscene, Chip combines all the temples to form the Gaia Colossus to battle Dark Gaia. And this boss is really fucking boring. It's just a matter of avoiding debris to get close to Dark Gaia, doing some QTEs, and a small platforming sequence with Sonic. Rinse and repeat 3 times, and that's that phase of the fight. The only thing I do actually enjoy from it is those Sonic sections. But one thing that really pissed me off is if you die at any point during this, the game puts you right back. Not back to the start of whatever section you got to, so say if you die in the second Sonic platforming section, you don't go back to that. You don't go back to the start of the boss even, with Gaia Colossus versus Dark Gaia. No. It puts you back to the Egg Dragoon, meaning you have to fight that boss all over again if you mess up and you want to fight Dark Gaia for another time. Once you manage to get past that, though, then it's on to the next phase. Perfect Dark Gaia versus Super Sonic. One of my least favourite final bosses in the series. Oh no. You just bounce off whatever dragon head you find around this big orb protecting the boss. You then do some QTEs, one of them being up to 60 button presses. 60 times! Jesus! On a more positive note, I do like the actual ending of the story. Sonic can't make it out of the planet's core on his own, and Chip chooses to stay deep below the Earth, using the last of his power to save Sonic, with only his bracelet to remember him by. Sonic puts it around his wrist and is seen running off to his next adventure. Although I didn't really like Chip as a character, like I mentioned before, I do think that this moment is really well paid off. I actually wish that they kept the bracelet as a permanent change to Sonic's design. I think that would have gave the story a lot more weight, but oh well. And that's Sonic Unleashed. On HD consoles, that is. We're not quite done. While Sonic Team made versions of the game on Xbox 360 and PS3, Dibs created ports for the Wii and PS2. Although you may think that they're just graphically inferior ports, they're pretty different games, so I'm going to take a look at them fully as well. Like I just said, this is a pretty different beast. Granted, it is most likely due to the weaker hardware, but I'll get to the meat of the gameplay in a moment. I have to say, the tutorial here is really obnoxious. It makes you go through a ton of mini-missions with such engaging tasks as jump, jump again, do a drift, do a boost, hooray. Just do what the HD game did and have a normal level with optional hitboxes if you want them. I genuinely don't understand why they didn't just repeat the good formula they already had with a tutorial. Anyway, the gameplay changes. It is still a fully 3D adventure, and you have all your moves from the get-go this time around. Best of all, they made the homing attack normal again. Thank the gods, the Sonic gods! The biggest difference is how the boost works. Instead of a continuous dash in whatever direction Sonic's facing, it's separated into segments where you do boost forward for a few seconds. And you can increase the gauge by performing well in the levels, getting rings, destroying enemies and doing action change, which you get for doing cool moves back to back. It makes the boost feel a lot more tactical. I don't think this is better or worse than the HD version, it's just unique and I appreciate that. Sun and Moon medals work differently here as well, where you get them at the end of stages, the amount increasing depending on what rank you get instead of having them hidden in the levels. I imagine they made this change since you can't explore the overworlds anymore, they're purely point and click now, which I'm really not a fan of. I know it'll be due to technical limitations, but it's way more boring compared to being able to actually explore the environments. Although a cool addition they made is having the Gaia temples fully explorable, being how you get to levels instead here. The changes to the Werehog are a bit of a mixed bag. He feels much more agile than his HD counterpart. Neither are super in-depth combat-wise, but HD does feel a little bit more complex, for lack of a better word. However, the combat is much snappier here, making required fights over a lot quicker, and I think that makes his levels a lot more fun, to be honest. It is dumb, but sometimes it's fun to button mash than have slower but more methodical combos. His platforming, however, is a huge downgrade. His stretchy arm segments do not feel responsive at all, and that makes any bottomless pits a lot scarier. As a whole, the game feels a lot more streamlined in comparison now I think about it, and I can get behind that. But I've also noticed the further I get into the game, the more I feel that the combat does just work better here across the board, because you get access to more combos the further in you get, so I might have to eat my earlier words there. I've also noticed that the levels, particularly the daytime ones, are far more gimmick focused. Honestly, I think if they managed to combine the platforming of the HD version with Wii's combat and general movement, the Werehog would have had a way more positive reception. I'm really happy they keep the music the same though, because Unleashed OST is amazing. I did mention some of the nighttime tracks a little bit at the start of the video, but I just want to name a few tracks that I really like. Of course, I love the main theme, Endless Possibility, and the final boss theme, which is the orchestrated version. Apato's Day stands out. And Windmill Isle at day and night. I love both of Cool Edge's themes. I love Spagonia's day and night theme. And I like Rooftop Runs. I really like Dragon Road's day theme.
Go!
Holoska's night theme. Day and night in Empire City. Shamar Day. Skyscraper Scampers Day. The Egg Dragoon.
You little... Impossible! Impossible! You little... Impossible!
My personal favourite, Chun-Nan at Night. And lastly, a track that you hear a few seconds of in HD, but is much more prominent here, the Gaia Gate theme. Getting back to the gameplay, the Unleash mode works way better here too. It feels like a genuine power-up rather than the tiny speed up and negligible damage increase it felt like in the HD version. And you hand out stand rushes like it's nothing here in Unleash mode, it is great. I just wish that it wasn't so awkward to make him use his actual run or do the dash attack in the air. You end up doing the dash attack in the air a lot by accident in my experience, and it leads to some unfair deaths. And struggling to make Sonic break into his sprint makes him look like he's a drunk toddler half the time. The boss fights are pretty much a one-to-one with the HD version, with little twists on the mechanics included, which I find quite surprising. I've also noticed that a lot of daytime Sonic's level designs are very centered around performing consecutive actions, rather than the more free-flow nature HD tends to go for, most likely due to the action chain mechanic, which is pretty unique as far as 3D Sonic games go. I don't think they ever bring back the whole action chain thing again. Okay, this is me in editing, and literally as I was making this video, the second update of Sonic Frontiers came out, and a lot of that update is centered around action chains, which is all about doing cool things consecutively in a row to build up points. So, yeah. No, they like action chains, they brought it back. I mean, I know that a lot of the stuff in Sonic platforming is hitting thing to thing and doing consecutive tricks, but specifically the term action chain, I don't think it's been used since Unleashed on Wii, so yeah, cool. Hooray for action chains. Okay, editing me done. The only thing I really don't like about Sonic here is that the boost will only let you go forward, meaning you can't use it in any direction like you can in HD. To go back on what I said about the bosses and making little twists on their mechanics, take the Holoska boss as an example. It is mostly the same, except this time you need to destroy glowing doors instead of dragon heads, and then throw the ice canisters at the main boss that he spits out, instead of taking one up to his platform like in the Xbox 360 and PS3 versions. It'll do small twists like this across the fights in the game. Another side note, for some reason you get a Lights Dash tutorial in Shamar. This is like the 5th world. I know that you get the Light Dash in Shamar in HD, but you have it from the second you open the game in Unleashed. You get it immediately, so it's weird that a tutorial for it comes this late. Maybe because you get the Light Dash in Shamar and they were basing it off the HD version, and then they made that assuming that upgrades were going to be in, and then they decided not to have upgrades. I don't know, but it is strange that it comes this late. Speaking of Shamar, the Dark Guardian fight was actually changed slightly. The puzzle aspect is completely scrapped for a one-on-one brawl. I like both approaches. It is really cool you get a fight one-on-one with an opponent with a similar moveset to the Werehog. I like it. It kind of reminds me of a rival fight in action games. Think Virgil in DMC or Jetstream Sam in Metal Gear Rising. Obviously not as complex or, to be honest, cool or memorable as those guys, but you know, that was the closest equivalent I could come up with. And thinking about it, the Wii version feels quite a bit shorter than on HD consoles. I mean, Empire City was omitted completely, and Missouri is only used for the Egg Beetle boss. Again, I suppose it's due to the more limited tech, but this didn't stop them from making Eggmanland really challenging still. Granted, it's not quite as bad as HD, but it is still really difficult in my opinion, mainly due to only getting 2 lives with no chance to earn any more. At least that's not a mechanic with just Eggmanland, and it's across the whole game. Getting 100 rings doesn't increase your life bar this time, you get purely 2 attempts, probably because of the more mission-focused structure of the gameplay, but it can get frustrating. They've kept the Egg Dragoon more or less exactly the same, only getting rid of the large amount of QTEs, making it just a straight up dodge and smack the glowy bit type of affair, which I rate is better than a good fight between pressing X 16 times. It's good with me. Unlike every other boss so far though, the Dark Gaia fight is substantially different and absolutely for the better. The Gaia Colossus fight has been changed to a punch-out style minigame, dodging in the direction of Dark Gaia's swipes and quickly punching in the opposite direction to counter. It's a ton of fun, and it still keeps the platforming segments with Sonic in between. Supersonic's section is completely different as well. This time around you need to move left and right to collect rings, dodging to avoid perfect Dark Gaia's swipes. You need to line Supersonic up with one of its eyes and then charge forward past meteorites, otherwise you're put back to lining yourself up for another attack. It feels extremely similar to the final fights in Secret Rings and Black Knight, and this is a case where I don't really like either encounter. Both feel kinda tedious in their own special ways. That Punch-Out fight was dope though, it was the best part of the ending by far. So, over the course of this video, you've probably been expecting me to tell you which version is the one you should go for, and which is the one that you need to avoid like the plague. Which is the definitive Sonic Unleashed experience, and the fact of the matter is, I don't think there is one. They're both good games, don't get me wrong, they're also pretty damn flawed in their own ways, but both of these games I do genuinely feel are worth your time, but they both need to be more accessible. Unleash needs a complete or ultimate edition more than any other Sonic game. I'm looking at you, Sonic Colors. It would benefit the most by far with a modern port with a stable frame rate, and in a perfect world, both ports being available. Now, if you have an Xbox One or Series S or X, you can actually play Unleashed with a rock solid frame rate, so if you have one, go for that, but for the rest of us, however you can, whether that's original hardware, emulation, Unleashed, HD, or SD or Unleashed as it's come to be known, I think Sonic Team's big step forward after 06 is worth checking out, even today. And that is my thoughts and feelings on Sonic Unleashed, both HD and SD. Did you agree? Do you prefer one over the other? Do you dislike both of them? Do you love both of them? Please let me know in the comments down below. And if you enjoyed the video, please like it. If you didn't enjoy the video, then dislike it. Subscribe, share to people, you know, all the cool YouTube stuff. Comment, man. Yeah, comment anything you want, as long as it's reasonable. Just put man if you want. Just to give a kind of little update for me, because I know I haven't posted in like a month. I did not mean to go this song without posting, but hey, life. I've got quite a few videos in the works. I've got one video coming up that is quite different to anything that I've done on this channel so far, and is about a series I haven't covered yet. So please look forward to that. I'm not revealing what it is. You'll see it when I make a video on a new game series that I haven't made about so far. I might make more videos on that series if people like it. Who knows? I've got smaller videos planned covering my thoughts on Sonic Origins Plus and JoJo's All-Star Battle DLC, like the Season 1 pass and the announcement of a Season 2 pass. Those will both get their own shorter, more non-scripted videos, like what I'm doing now, I guess. I have a Pokemon video that's in pre-production, and I have another Sonic video that's in pre-production as well. So there is definitely content coming. I've got that more prepared. Hopefully you shouldn't get a drought like this in the future. But hey, you know, life's hard, so no promises. I do also have a job that I have because I don't make money on this channel. I do this for fun, first and foremost. I just do this because it's a hobby. But you know what, I've been thinking about it, and it's a hobby I'd like to make a career someday, so I've been thinking of trying to maybe make some social media profile for myself to kind of push myself out there a bit more. I don't know if that's a good idea or not, but I've decided I want to try and make a goal for myself for this channel, and I want to try and get at least 500 subscribers by the end of the year. I don't think that's a particularly unreasonable goal to set for myself. So it would be really cool if you guys could help me out with that. Push me up in the algorithm, whatever it takes. I know we've done it before because I have a few videos with like over 10k views. So to be able to do this just generally as a career would obviously be the dream, the goal. But I do this for fun first and foremost, and I wouldn't do it if I wasn't having fun. And most importantly, I hope you guys are going to enjoy it, and I hope you're enjoying what I'm putting out so far. So yeah, if you are enjoying it, please let me know, and please like and subscribe so I can make more. But I want to thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you all in my next video. Bye bye.